Evening. I'd like to call the regular council meeting of Coburg Municipal Council to order on Monday, June 8th at 6 p.m. As you know, this meeting is being streamed and audio-video recorded and shall form part of the record with retained according to the Town of Cobourg retention bylaw. If you require more information, please contact our municipal clerk's office. Are there any comments, concerns on the agenda before us? Seeing none, I'll call a seconder. I better go for...
We don't need that, Your Worship.
Okay. At this point, sorry, there it is before me. I would like to request just a moment of reflection. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Deputy Mayor, are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, Your Worship, there is one addition to tonight's agenda. It is a notice of motion from Councillor Emily Chorley and Councillor Adam Bureau regarding the equity and inclusion policy for the Town of Cobourg. The action recommended that the matter be added to the agenda.
Seconder. Councillor Beatty, all in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interests from members of council? Seeing none, I'd like to proceed. Mr. Larmer?
Yes. Next, Your Worship, we have the adoption of the Tuesday, May 19th, 2020 regular council meeting minutes.
Deputy Mayor?
Action recommended that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on Tuesday, May 19th, 2020.
Any questions? Seconder? Councillor Darling, discussion? Concerns? All in favor? Carried. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
The second item is the adoption of the May 21st, 2020 special council meeting minutes. The action recommended that council adopt the action recommended that council adopt the minutes of the special council meeting held on Thursday, May 21st, 2020.
Seconder. Councillor Burkett, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
And the last item is the adoption of the June 1st, 2020 special council meetings minutes held on June 1st. The action recommended that council adopt the minutes of the special council meeting held on Monday, June 1st, 2020.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. I believe, Mr. Larmer, there are no presentations or delegations. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. That takes us right back to Deputy Mayor under General Government Service.
Thank you, Worship. First item is the Committee of the Whole meeting notes held on Monday, June 1st, 2020. Action recommended that council receive the notes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on Monday, June 1st, 2020 for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Burkett, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Deputy Mayor.
Second item is a memo from the Senior Financial Analyst regarding the Public Sector Accounting Board PSAB Excluded Expenses Report, Ontario Regulation 284-09. I see our financial analyst is here. So, Mr. Davey, will she be speaking to this tonight? Oh, sorry. The action recommended that council adopt the compliance report for expenses excluded from the 2020 budget outlined in the report as a requirement of the Ontario Regulation 284/09 passed under the Municipal Act 2001.
Okay, although I'll call for a seconder, we will allow discussion, and Jennifer, any presentation or concerns or questions. Thank you, Councillor Barreau. Jennifer, would you like to speak to this? How would you
I
like?
don't have any specific comments to make, but I can take any questions if anybody's unclear of the report and what I'm presenting.
Would you like to do some key highlights, or would you like to just take questions?
Yeah, I can absolutely go through.
Okay, thank you.
This is basically, if you look at the last page of the report, the Excel spreadsheet there, it's basically a reconciliation of what the council has passed last fall for the 2020 budget. And I'm just adjusting those numbers to reflect the PSAB accounting standards. So if you will, council approves the budget, and it's basically a cash-based budget because the process is we have to figure out how much operating cash we need for the year in order to operate. So at the end of the year, when I prepare the financial statements, I'm using the 2020 actuals, and beside that, I have a column for the budgeted figures. So this last column, the adjusted 2020 budget, will be those figures on that income statement on the financial statements of the 2020 financial statements of the municipality. So I'm basically just adjusting for a few accounting entries, such as amortization expense, which is a non-cash accounting entry that the municipality is not required to budget for because it is non-cash. So I'm also backing out long-term debt principal payments because the principal payments, again, will be applied to the balance sheet on the financial statements. But however, as council knows, they still have to come up with the cash in order to pay the long-term debt payments, which is also principal and the interest side. So I'm just, again, backing out the interest side. I'm backing out the principal side and applying it to the balance sheet at the end of the year. So in essence, this report is just highlighting those figures, and it has no financial impact or cash impact to the municipality. It's just kind of consolidating and at the end of the year so we can compare the actuals to adjusted realistic budget figures.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions to Jennifer from members of council? Well, Jennifer, on behalf of council, I'd like to compliment, because I know we have come a long way in you being our senior financial analyst. When I first came on council, I can't remember if we had one, but not in the early days. And I feel it certainly has made a very strong difference in our financial presentations, not only to council, but to the public. So I'd like to thank you for your efforts in working with our director, of course, Mr. Davey. So thank you.
Thank you. And I wouldn't be able to do it without everybody in the finance department. So thank you and good night.
Okay, take care. Have a nice night.
Thanks.
Off to Public Works Service. Councillor Darling.
Need to vote on that, Your Worship?
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I'm moving ahead on my, without any further discussion, all those in favor? Against? Carried. Public Works Service, Councillor Darling.
Sorry, Brett, my mistake. Forgot to unmute. Memo from the Director of Public Works regarding the extension of free transit and parking within the town of Coburg. The action recommended that council extend free transit and parking till June 30th, 2020.
Seconder. Councillor Burkett, discussion. Starting with Deputy Mayor, then I'll go to Councillor Burrow.
we may have the same concern. We had a motion passed that was carried on the 23rd of March that basically extended free parking downtown from June 1st to August 31st. So I was a little surprised that this is only saying April 30th.
Okay, if I can direct that to Director Wills, please.
Sure. My understanding with that, it was the downtown parking that was extended to August 31st and didn't incorporate waterfront. So I was just bringing it all together to make sure that there's a date, an end date for all different, for both transit, downtown, and waterfront parking.
So the downtown parking will still be free until the end of August. Okay,
Yes, sir.
I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Burwell.
I had the same question.
Okay, well, thank you. Any further questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Against? Carried. We're off now to Parks and Recreation Services. Councillor Chorley.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. Item 1 is a memo from the Deputy Director of Community Services regarding the Town of Cobourg waterfront operations update. The action recommended is that Council receive the report from the Deputy Director of Community Services for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Burkett, discussion? Councillor Beatty.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Perhaps this is through you to the Director Hustwick. Just given in light the announcement that came out from the province today with phase 2 reopening, and it touches on things such as splash pad and pools and campgrounds. Any verbal updates to the written report that Council should take into consideration?
Before I pass it over to Director Hustwick for comment, just to make clear, it is true the announcement was made today by Premier Ford, but I spoke with our clerk earlier today, and we're still waiting the actual regulations. And just to be aware, it generally takes 24, 48 hours for us to receive that within our departments. With that being stated, Director Hustwick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'd be happy to give a brief update on the Premier's announcement today. As of Friday, June 12th, the government is increasing the number of individuals allowed for social gatherings across the province from 5 to 10. And then based on the health units and their records related to COVID and current status, they're opening up a number of recreational facilities, and we are in one of those health unit jurisdictions. Water recreational facilities such as splash pads, wading pools, and all swimming pools will be allowed to open as of Friday. They are also opening all provincial parks, beach access, and camping. And they're also allowing, as of the same date, camping in private campgrounds, which ours presumably applies. And as the Mayor said, we always have to wait for the regulations to see exactly how we interpret all of these. And the government is also allowing outdoor-only recreational facilities and training for outdoor team sports with limits on social distancing. So again, we're not sure exactly what that means, but presumably soccer pitches, ball diamonds, things like that. So again, we'll have to wait and see exactly what the government's intention was.
Councillor Chorley, Councillor Beatty, does that help? I know it was a very extensive list, somewhere between 10 plus pages.
It does. I do have a follow-up question, but you were directing something to Councillor Chorley, so I can wait.
Oh, sorry, just my error. Go ahead, Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, because I appreciate the thought that was given in the director's report outlining the various options and importantly, staff resources that it would take to ensure safe operations and safe sanitation. On page to the director in 8.0 under conclusion, it states that the Community Services Division is seeking council direction on whether to and then 5 points on the various assets and activities. Will these individually be coming back to council, to the mayor's point, waiting for the interpretation of the regulation that is yet to come?
Director Housebeck.
Your Worship, to Councillor Beattie, I guess the intention of bringing this before council tonight was mainly to provide an update on what at the waterfront is happening, and also to highlight future decisions that relate to those facilities that are not currently open. Based on last week's council discussions, thought it would be appropriate to just put this in front of council to determine whether there was any strong feelings one way or another. So what we've been doing is through the emergency control group is evaluating all of the provincial announcements and then making decisions on what facilities to open up based on advice from the health unit, based on staffing, based on procedures that need to be developed. So those types of discussions and decisions happen each day. But based on what happened at the last council meeting, we thought if council has any strong opinions on whether or not we should open facilities once the government allowed it, and of course today's announcement is pushing a lot of that forward, but if council has a preference for not opening the campground or not opening the pool, we just want to provide that opportunity so that we can then make some decisions. If there is no strong preference in order to keep facilities closed, then we would just continue to work through the internal procedures of making sure that guidelines are in place, staffing are in place, and then opening up facilities as we're able to. I hope that helps.
And to Councillor Beattie and the rest of council, the emergency control group has been very good about ensuring as we get the different protocols, we are bypassing them for approval by the health unit, just to make sure we're in total alignment, because often in all these orders from the province, you'll see it always makes a statement in that you have the capacity and the logistics to do so safely. So that has always been our mantra moving forward, and I expect we'll continue to do the same. Are there any further questions? Councillor Beattie?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make sure that I understood the director's last comment, and apologies, Director Huswick, I don't mean to keep pressing you, because the report was very straightforward. I think I just want to understand what you said. If council doesn't give clear direction this evening on some of these 5 items, then obviously through the EOC and through the various operational levels, the municipality would work towards reopening these facilities as permitted by the provincial framework and health unit regulations.
Director Huswick?
Your Worship, to Councillor Beattie, that's more or less correct. We would certainly try to move forward with provincial direction to open up facilities, but again, it would be based on our resource capacity, our ability to implement the procedures that we need to develop. So for example, when we came forward with a recommendation not to proceed with summer camp, even though the government hadn't yet approved it, it was simply because the complexity of trying to run a program like that with higher ratio of staffing in a facility that may or may not be open, there was a lot of activities to take place in order to do that. At the end of the day, it may not have been cost effective, and we knew that the YMCA is working very hard to meet local demand. So rather than duplicating services in something as complex as that, we said it was easier just not to focus on trying to do that and to focus our resources on other activities. So for the waterfront, I could quickly go through. The splash pads are allowed. We would have internal discussions about our ability to clean those facilities, and that would influence, internally whether we would open that up. The Centennial Pool, we've been working very closely with the YMCA. They've actually come up and provided us with a schedule and a program that is based on the Life Saving Society's new guidelines for opening up pools and waterfront areas. So they believe that they're in a good position to open up pools when the government allows it. Now the government's allowing it. So I would think we would likely, again, we'd have to have another discussion with Y, and they're able to make sure they're able to hire staff. I would think, we would be moving towards opening the pool. Same with the campground. We have a lot of reservations. There's a lot of demand. We're getting calls all the time, every day, for asking whether we're opening it and asking whether we can take reservations. To this point, we said we're not taking reservations until starting by June 12th. So, and then with the marina, we are working towards opening it on the 12th. One of the questions that has been asked is whether we would allow transient boaters. And I think that came up at council last week. So we are working on our ability to manage transient boaters really doesn't change too much, because we're going to have the staff in place ideally to operate the seasonals. And we will have procedures that all users in the marina would have to follow. We've also looked at likely having a separate dock for transient boaters, just to separate them from the seasonal. So, I think these are discussions that we will continue to have with the emergency control group. But to answer your question simply, I would think that we, as long as we're able to hire the appropriate staffing, and a lot of summer students have found other jobs. So, I mean, that's a process we would have to go through before we would make a decision, and making sure all of the procedures are go through the proper vetting of the emergency control group to make sure that they're adequate. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Beattie, does that help?
It does, thank you. I think I'm still just toying with whether the director is looking for clear direction from council tonight, or.
Well, I'd like to suggest, please remember, we still like to have the regulations before us, because what's on social media may not be exactly what's in the regulation. So the fact that it just announced today, I checked with Mr. Larmer, he thought they would arrive somewhere between 24 and 48 hours afterwards.
I can appreciate that. I'm just trying to be proactive versus what happened with the beach a few weeks ago, where I think the public was under one understanding of the status quo. The framework opened. Obviously, staff follow the provincial framework as operationally they're meant to, and then it caused some public confusion, and then it came back to council. So I'm just trying to make sure that if we have the opportunity to provide some direction, obviously pending staff resources and all regulations as reviewed by the provincial framework, if we have an opportunity to provide some direction now to manage expectations amongst staff and the public, I would be willing to put that forward now. But I'm hearing you, your worship, as well as I'm listening to the director as well. So I'll pause there, because I know that Councillor Chorley had her hand up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chorley.
Thank you. I have a question either for Mr. Davey or Director Hustwick. With the campground currently being used as a base camp for first responders, what is the plan in terms of opening the campground to regular users? How is that going to work? Is the base camp going to be relocated? What are your options at the moment?
Who would like to handle that? Mr. Davey, Director Hustwick?
I can take the first shot at it. I think, your worship, through you to Councillor Chorley, I think what we would need to do is have a discussion with the emergency control group as to whether it's felt that there's still a need for that first responders base camp. And if there is, then I don't see how we could keep that and open the campground to the public as well. If the feeling is that it's no longer required, then obviously it'd be a pretty easy process to move out what's in there right now. So that's, I think, something now that with this announcement that came out today, I think that's something we're going to have a serious discussion.
Director Hustwick, any comment from your end?
Not very much, Your Worship, other than we could get it operational once the decision's made in about a week. We did a lot of work in de-winterizing it in order to set it up for the relief camp, so it'll take about a week to get it geared up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Larmer, if I'm just looking for some direction from you, if I may, is it worth us at this point dealing with the action recommended? And then if Councillor Chorley, someone else wants to move additional items to deal with that separately, I'm just looking for direction because it's to receive the report for information purposes at this point.
That's the only thing that's on the floor right now.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
That's the only thing that's on the floor is to receive the report for information. So we're just discussing if that's carries, and then that's that.
Okay, so back to you, Councillor Beatty. Sorry, I saw Director Huswick's hand go up.
And the Deputy Mayor. So I if you can come back to me after both of those, but thank you.
To Director Huswick, then the Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, I think Mr. Huswick is frozen.
Oh. Yeah, I was frozen for a second. I'm sorry. Did you call upon me?
I thought I saw your hand. I apologize. Was your hand up?
Yes, Your Worship. Sorry, I
Yes.
just want to clarify once again for Councillor Beatty and all of Council. Again, if there are no strong objections to any of these facilities opening when the emergency control group believes we're ready to open them, then we don't need any further direction. But if Council strongly objects to, for example, the campground opening for any reason, then we would need to know that, because then we can stop planning for it. But if there's no strong objections and you just rely on the emergency control group to open facilities when we believe we're ready, then you can simply accept the report and we'll proceed as we would ordinarily do. Hope that clarifies.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your comments, Director Huswick. We all basically just got this report on Friday. It wasn't asked for by this council, and thank you for bringing it. But I'm not ready to make any kind of, I do have some strong reservations, but I have learned on this council to wait for Brent Larmer to walk us through the legislation to let us know what we can and we can't do. And I think it would be premature for council to give staff any kind of direction, but like Councillor Beatty said, we do not want to have another situation of confusion to the public. One thing, the province, one thing, the town. I think, per my own opinion, and it's just my opinion, these regulations phase 2 will not be taking place until this Friday. That leaves us a week between that and the June 22nd meeting that we were going to put forward for the other waterfront issues, i.e. the beach. I really, frankly, would like to have council have a discussion on this so that anybody from the public who also has concerns, which they did not have time to do a delegation tonight, nor would they, because we did not get all the legislation, to add that to the June 22nd meeting. So I would like to go back to Director Huswick and ask him if council, now I understand that's a committee of the whole, that's that night, but what kind of time frame? You mentioned hiring, you mentioned at least a week. If we did have some concerns, and I do, but I'm not going to bring them up tonight because I'm not ready, that how long after the 22nd? I mean, you're looking at probably a July and August season as opposed to any part of June, but I'd feel more comfortable once our municipal clerk has looked at the legislation before we make any decision. So Director Huswick, how long after that would you be able to anticipate either the campground, the marina is opening on the 12th, we know that, and with lift-in on the 13th. So that's a given. I have concerns with the transients, but I haven't done enough research to follow up with this evening.
Director Huswick.
Your Worship, to the Deputy Mayor, I guess going sort of through each item, obviously the splash pad we can open if we have the staffing at any time. The campground, we would The messaging we have been given out was June 12th, which was consistent with what we had said about the marina. We've canceled all bookings until June 12th. If we had to wait for direction until the 22nd, then that's committee of the whole. Then presumably we'd have to go to council after that. We would have to cancel all the rest of June and then potentially into July. At that point, we would have to find out whether we'd be able to find enough employees. And it would take about a week of preparation. So we could certainly be into July before we would be able to operate the campground. The marina, our plan is to open it on the 12th. We can defer decisions related to transients as long as we want. But we would have to get that messaging out because we're getting calls all the time. So it becomes, and in terms of the pool, the YMCA had originally said about June 12th was probably the latest date they could hold off before having a final decision in terms of getting the pool ready, getting the staff trained, hired, trained, and operating. So it's all waiting that long would certainly be pushing the boundaries.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and this will be my last comment because I thanked everyone to helping me walk through the implications of decision making, which is appreciated. I have no qualm with us starting to safely and cautiously reopen some of our facilities, including outdoor rec, the marina, including transient slips, splash pad, keeping in mind children need a place to play and cool off if there's not going to be any cooling centers. We've closed access to the water from the main beach. It'll complement Victoria Park as well as the campground, obviously keeping in mind if the respite and quarantine team no longer needs the site for overflow, which I don't see that being a problem considering we haven't had any occupancy there. So in closing, I'll support the motion on the floor because I'm under the understanding that without any strong objections or motions in place tonight preventing that, we'll continue to proceed. I still stand on the ground that we closed the beach for the right reasons. I see overcrowding versus a difference of organized and safe operational tourism related activity. We have another item on the agenda tonight regarding activity that's supporting local economic recovery and following the advice of the province and public health and the EOC. I hope we can start opening up some of our components in the town and hopefully starting to that complement downtown and wider town business. So I think if I hear the director correctly, knowing that receiving the report for information purposes and then through the EOC, operationally, you'll continue to open assets and activities as deemed necessary and safe.
Okay, any other comment from members of council? See none, all in favor? Against? Carried. Back to you, Deputy Mayor, under General Government Services. Motions?
Thank you, Your Worship. First motion is a motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding the awarding of the Victoria Hall sandstone and front door repair tender. Motion, hang on, let me just open that up. I can't read it all, fortunately, because you've got pictures in the way. Can you move it over, Mr. Larmer?
You can move yours there, I believe, Deputy Mayor. Just drag and drop the boxes of people.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Whereas it's moved by myself, I need a seconder. Whereas the Committee of the Whole meeting on June 1st, 2020, Council considered a memo from the Interim Chief Administrative Officer, Treasurer, regarding the Victoria Hall sandstone and front door repair tender. Now therefore be it resolved that council award the Victoria Hall sandstone and front door repair tender CO 20-17 MNT to Colonial Building Restoration Limited in the amount of $275,000 plus non-refundable HST in the amount of $4,840 for a total of $279,840.
Seconder. Councillor Darling, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Against? Carried.
Motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding the advisory committees and quasi-judicial boards participation through electronic meeting software, my apologies. Oh, sorry, Your Worship, did we get a seconder from that last motion?
Yes,
We did?
Yes, we did.
Okay. It's moved by myself and seconded by whomever. Whereas at the Committee of the Whole meeting on June 1st, 2020, Council considered a memo from the Municipal Clerk Manager of Legislative Services regarding advisory committees and quasi-judicial boards participation through electronic meetings. Now therefore be it resolved that Council allow all advisory committees and quasi-judicial boards to be permitted to participate electronically via teleconferencing, video teleconferencing, pursuant to the recent amendments of the town's procedural bylaw, when required through council direction or input on a matter as an alternative way to engage and continue to perform advisory committee duties to assist in municipal council decision-making during the COVID-19 pandemic, public health, provincial and local state of emergency.
Okay, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Burkett, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Against? Carried. We're off to Planning and Development Services. Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item number 1 is a motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding a request for the deferral of building permit fees and development charges for the Affordable Housing Solutions Corporation at 82 Monroe Inc., 2512464 Ontario Inc., 82 Monroe Street in Coburg. The motion moved by myself and will require a seconder, whereas at the Committee of the Whole on June 1st, 2020, Council considered a memo from the Director of Planning and Development regarding a request for deferral of building permit fees and development charges for Affordable Housing Solutions Corporation, 82 Monroe Inc., 2512464 Ontario Inc., at 82 Monroe Street in Coburg. Now therefore be it resolved that Council approve the request by Affordable Housing Solutions Corporations, 82 Monroe Inc., 2512464 Ontario Inc., for a 5-year deferral of applicable building permit fees and development charges in the amount of $436,233.95 for the 35-unit market and affordable rental building located at 82 Monroe Street in Coburg, and further that Council directs staff to prepare a report with a recommendation regarding the recent changes to the Development Charges Act as amended by Bill 108, the More Homes, More Choices Act 2019, for Council's consideration.
Seconder. Councillor Burrow, discussion? All in favor? Against? Carried.
Proceeding, item number 2 is a motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding the heritage permit approval of the 2nd Street Rainbow Crosswalk in Coburg. Moved by myself and require a seconder. Whereas at the Committee of the Whole meeting on June 1st, 2020, Council considered a memo from the Planner of Heritage regarding the 2nd Street Rainbow Crosswalk in Coburg. And whereas the Planning and Heritage staff has reviewed the proposed multicolor rainbow crosswalk motif in celebration of Pride Month at the intersection of 2nd Street and King Street West within the commercial core heritage of the Conservation District. And whereas Council has the authority to give its consent to a heritage permit to allow the celebratory pedestrian crosswalk motif in the commercial core heritage conservation district. Now therefore be it resolved that Council approve the heritage permit application for HP 2020-010 as submitted by Lori Wills on behalf of the corporation of the Town of Coburg, and further that this approval apply on an ongoing annual basis unless otherwise terminated by council.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Burkett. Discussion? All in favor? Against? Carried. We're off to Public Works Services. Councillor Darling.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a motion from the Committee of Whole regarding approval and installation of a new makeup air unit in the Headworks building at Water Pollution Control Plant number 2. The motion moved by myself will need a seconder, whereas the Committee of the Whole meeting on June 1st, 2020, Council considered a memo from the Manager of Environmental Services regarding the pump replacement at the McGill pumping station. Now therefore be it resolved that Council approve the purchase of a new xylem pump at the McGill pumping station at a cost of $86,834, including non-refundable HST, to be funded by the approved 2020 Environmental Services capital budget.
Seconder, Councillor Chorley. Discussion? All in favor? Against? Carried.
Okay, the second motion, a motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding approval and installation of a new makeup air unit in the Headworks building and Water Pollution Control Plant number 2. Motion moved by myself would require a seconder, whereas the Committee of the Whole on June 1st, 2020 Council considered memo from the Manager of Environmental Services regarding a new makeup air handling unit in the Headworks building at Water Pollution Control Plant number 2, WPCP number 2. Now therefore be it resolved that Council approve the purchase and installation of a new makeup air unit in the Headworks building at plant number 2 at a cost of $65,465, including non-refundable HST, to be funded by the approved 2020 capital budget environmental services.
Seconder, Councillor Beatty. Discussion? All in favor? Against? Carried. We're now off to Parks and Recreation Services. Councillor Chorley.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. Item 1, motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding the cancellation of summer camps at the Coburg Community Center. Moved by myself, whereas at the Committee of the Whole meeting on June 1st, 2020, Council considered a memo from the Deputy Director of Community Services regarding Coburg Community Center summer camps. Now therefore be it resolved that Council authorize municipal staff to cancel all planned summer camps at the Coburg Community Center, originally planned for June 29th, 2020 to September 4th, 2020, due to the current COVID-19 pandemic.
Seconder, Councillor Beatty. Discussion? All in favor? Against? Carried. We're to Bylaws, Planning and Development Services. Back to Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Your Worship. Number 1 is a bylaw for 036-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a deferral agreement with Affordable Housing Solutions Corporation, 82 Monroe Inc., 2512464 Ontario Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Cobourg for 82 Monroe Street, Coburg. The action recommended is that Council adopt bylaws 036-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the municipal clerk are hereby authorized and instructed to execute on behalf of the corporation an agreement with Affordable Housing Solutions Corporation, 82 Monroe Inc., 2512464 Ontario Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Coburg to permit a 5-year deferral of development charges from the date of occupancy in the amount of $436,233.95 for the 35-unit market and affordable rental apartment building at 82 Monroe Street in Coburg.
Seconder, Councillor Darling. Discussion? All in favor? Against? Carried.
Thank you. Item number 2 is for bylaw number 037-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a development agreement with Trinity Northumberland Inc., Timber Creek Mortgage Servicing Inc., Lakefront Utility Services, Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Coburg for 1111 Elgin Street, West, Coburg. The action recommended is that Council adopt bylaw number 037-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and municipal clerk to execute on behalf of the corporation an agreement with Trinity Northumberland, Inc., Timber Creek Mortgage Servicing, Inc., Lakefront Utility Services, Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Coburg for the development of a 930 meter squared freestanding multi-unit commercial building and associated driveway and parking lot for modifications at 1111 Elgin Street West in Coburg.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you. And finally, number 3 is for bylaw number 038-2020, being a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw number 85-2003 for 1111 Elgin Street West, Coburg. And the action recommended is that Council adopt bylaw number 038-2020, being a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw number 85-2003.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion? All in favor? Against? Carried. And I believe that takes us back to General Government Services, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, that the following bylaws be passed. 1, a bylaw 036-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a deferral agreement with Affordable Housing Solutions Corporation, 82 Monroe Street, 251-2464, Ontario, Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Coburg, 82 Monroe Street, Coburg. Bylaw 037-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a development agreement with Trinity Northumberland, Inc., Timber Creek Mortgage Services, Inc., Lakefront Utility Services, Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Coburg for 1111 Elgin Street West, Coburg. And 3, a bylaw 038-2020, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 85-2003 for 1111 Elgin Street West, Coburg. Action recommended that leave be granted to introduce bylaw 036-2020 to 038-2020 and to dispense with the reading of the bylaws by the municipal clerk, and that same be considered read and passed, and that the mayor and the municipal clerk sign the same and the seal of the corporation be thereto affixed.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Burkett, discussion? All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer, I believe we're now back to you.
Yes, next, Your Worship, we have correspondence, and this is a letter from National Defence Canada regarding the introduction of the new Canadian Armed Forces Regional Liaison Officer for the Severn East Region Chief Warrant Officer, Dean Stokes. And I believe this could be General Government Services.
Deputy Mayor.
That action recommended that Council receive the correspondence for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion? All in favor? Carried. We're now to the notice of motion, and Councillor Barreau, over to you.
Yeah, so first, before I start, I would like some just some clarification from the clerk, if that's okay. I would like to make an amendment to my notice of motion, if that's possible. Do I do that now or after I've read the action?
After.
So the action recommended is to refer it to the committee of the whole meeting on June 22nd, 2020.
Right.
So
Can I amend? I can amend that, or do it because I want to amend the motion.
So the procedural bylaw says that any notice of motion presented at the committee of the whole meeting, at the regular council meeting referred to committee of the whole meeting. The recommendation is just to refer it to the meeting for discussion of the committee of the whole. So you can't open up the actual notice of the motion until it gets referred to the meeting at the committee of the whole, where it can be discussion. So it's almost referred to that meeting. So if you wanted to deal with the motion today and amend it, you'd have to suspend the rules of order, which it needs a 2/3 majority vote.
Okay. Well, I would like to call the 2/3 of vote if, to deal with this tonight and suspend the rules.
Okay, is everybody clear from members of council?
Just needs a seconder on that.
Yes. Councillor Beatty, thank you. Again, everybody clear on what's before us? Okay, back to you, Councillor Burrow.
So I'll call the vote on the
I'll call
suspension.
the vote, but again, that's what you wish to stand. I'm just getting clarity.
Correct.
Thank you. All those in favor? Against? Carried. So back to you, Councillor Burrow.
Okay, so because to Councillor Beatty's point earlier this evening, the province is moving quick, and some of my motion is out of date already since Friday. So I would like to just select a few lines that I would like to keep in the motion and withdraw the other ones, and then I'll say my reasoning for after. Oh,
So-
Deputy, sorry, Mr. Larmer.
So now that the rules have been suspended, that now the councillor can put on the floor the motion. But it'll need to be seconded. Once it's read, then amendments can be made to the motion when it's on the floor.
okay, so I'll read the motion then. Council Bureau hereby files a notice of motion to be included. Subject: restaurant, pubs, and coffee shops, patio extensions. Which notice of motion reads as follows: whereas the provincial government has shut down restaurants, pubs, and coffee shops for inside seating and only open for takeout, and whereas the province may lift the closure, but with the restrictions to seating capacity and social distancing rules will still apply, and seating could possibly be at a maximum of 50%, and whereas this will be very hard for the successful and employed staff and could possibly see our restaurants, pubs, and coffee shops close. And whereas this council can show we support all businesses in Coburg, and this is one way council can assist local businesses. Now therefore be resolved that council approves 2 parking spots or the equivalent size of a patio extension at no charge to the restaurant, pub, or coffee shop, with a quick approval for outdoor patio permits to extend their patio and increase seating capacity, giving those businesses a chance to make money and stay open. And further that staff streamline the outdoor patio permit process and issue permits in an expedited manner. And further that if any of those restaurants, pubs, or coffee shops in Coburg don't have parking spots in front of their businesses, then council agrees that they can extend their patio by the same length of 2 parking spots. And further that council directs staff to come back with a report regarding council's direction to allow for restaurant, pubs, and coffee shops patio extensions in the town of Coburg for council's approval.
Okay. Seconder, please, on that before us. Councillor Darling. Further discussion. I'm assuming you like take the further discussion at this point, Councillor Burrow.
I would, please and thank you. Okay, so the first 2 lines, well, the first one we could keep in, the second one where is the maximum of 50%, if we take that out. Is everybody following? Any questions on that yet?
Well,
Okay.
I think at this point, if I'm tracking, I think Mr. Larmer, are you tracking this as we go through, or?
I'll reread the motion after I take the withdrawal out, what I'm taking out.
Just give me 1 second, Your Worship. I'll just be able to pull it up here. Technology, just give me 1 minute. Make it easier on us all there. Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Burrow, and then I did see your hand, Councillor Beatty. I'll go back to after Councillor Burrow's through.
And then the now therefore be resolved, if we could take that out.
Sorry, can we just go back to the start? I'll just make that change.
Okay, the whereas, the second whereas. The now therefore be resolved. And the second further that. And keep the rest. Would you like me to reread it?
No.
Is just to help me, is there one more beyond that, or I'm just asking. I'm
Oh
trying-
yeah, it's on the next page down.
Okay, thank you. So that remains?
Yes. So
Okay, thank you.
for the
Just
staff
for
report.
clarity.
That's an amendment, Your Worship, so he'll just need a seconder on that one.
Okay. Seconder, Deputy Mayor, thank you. All in favor?
Oh, wait, I
Okay,
have a
amendments.
question.
Okay, Councillor Beatty on the amendments before us.
I'm allowed to ask a question to this amendment, correct, before we vote?
Correct. Yeah.
Yep. Just to Councillor Bureau, my first question before your amendment was, I'm assuming I'm interpreting this correctly, that this is townwide, so restaurant and coffee shop establishments townwide.
Correct.
And secondly, can you just maybe let council know, why are you taking out that final further that indicates the 2 parking spots? What's your rationale for taking that out?
Because I'm not sure how feasible that could be for everybody. And I want to make sure that this motion includes everyone. So some particular spots may not be able to have a 2 parking spot limit or a maximum. So I think what's good about this is that the staff report will come back allowing to show how we can help the businesses expand their patios. Yep.
Sir Beatty?
I have one more question if another member of council doesn't.
No, go ahead. No.
Thank you. Can I ask the clerk to just put the motion back on the screen so I know in what section of the motion to direct my question? It could be eliminated in that spot. Council agreed that it's being taken out, so never mind. I don't have a question anymore. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for asking for that clarification. Councillor Burkett and then Councillor Darling.
So just some clarity from Councillor Burrow, and then maybe Director McGlashan can shine some light on it. So with your motion, you're putting forward, because you're removing the parking spot, that would allow, for example, buildings that are not downtown where they have lands to extend their patio. And I guess if that's the case in that case, is there any issue with that from Director McGlashan?
Okay.
I'll have to let him answer that because I do not know.
Maybe I can provide some information.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So just for I can provide a little information on this, there's a lot to this. Very much so, lots of information. There's a number of different kinds of patios. We have patios and outdoor spaces on municipal property, then we have it on private property. Some have alcohol, some don't have alcohol. Some do food, some don't have food. Some are required an authority of a permit under the AGCO, some don't. The difference, so let me just talk about the ones that have liquor licenses on them. Those with liquor licenses have to get authority and approval from the municipality, and under the legislation, it happens to need me. Unfortunately, it's not a council decision. It's something AGCO has under the authority legislation for us to approve on the legislation. And it's not just me, it's fire, building, public works, health unit. There's a number of different people that are involved in this process for that authority. When it comes to private property, council has no jurisdiction on people that want to expand their patios on private property. So if somebody wants to have a bigger area, then they can have a bigger area. It's only when we get into the middle municipal right away that becomes an issue, or they have to get approval. But if it's licensed under the liquor agency, it has to come through my office for approval, for final approval. But also that gets filtered through building, health, fire, public works. Also with these new regulations and these provisions, the province isn't allowing the indoor spaces to use. So then their whole occupancy now turns into the outside outdoor patio, which changes, which we need building approval, and there's some processes that has to go through. So there's a number of things that have to happen here, as well as when we get downtown or some municipal property, even down with the water, there's a restaurant has a patio there. Then we get to municipal right away, and then we start to get into our outdoor patio bylaw. which has a permitting process, again, which goes health unit, building, public works, clerk's office. So there's a lot of things to this. So I'm happy that there's an additional area, which is staff report. Whether we can have this happen in 2 days, I doubt that's likely because the regulation doesn't come in until Friday at midnight, so technically Saturday. So I just would caution council to start making these changes or these directions without knowing the actual authority that comes behind them. Just as a caution, I'd be happy to provide a report, provide some information and give you some information on the latitude of what you can and cannot do, especially private versus public. But I think we just have to be cautious when we start to jump at this a little bit too happily, which is good. It's a good thing that's happening, but we just have to cautiously work on this because, again, we get into insurance purposes and there's other requirements that we need part of the permitting process.
Right. And can I
Go ahead, Councillor Burrell, and then I'll.
Which I totally understand that. Thank you, Mr. Larmer. Totally get that. The whole idea for this was so that we could, get a staff report back on what we can and can't do. That's why I did make the amendments on this. And I want to make sure that we are there every step of the way that we could be, and without crossing over into operations or anything like that. That was the reason why. And there is no date on the staff report as well, because I know you're very busy, and I know that all the town staff is very busy. It was basically so that we could get a report back and help possibly expedite the patios, because now that we do know it is their only seating capacity. So just want to give them whatever possible help we can. That was for this motion.
Okay, thank you for that rationale with your explanation, Councillor Burrell. Councillor Burkett, did I see your hand or not? It was Councillor Darling, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Yes, I seconded the original motion on this to bring it to the floor for discussion. My question was the same sort of as Councillor Burkett said. I realized with alcohol and gaming and the bylaws that we have in place now that there would be a lot of hoops to jump through. So I just wanted to confirm with Mr. Larmer and Mr. McGlashan that these steps would be followed before we got a little too rambunctious. But I do support Councillor Bureau's thoughts behind this. I would love to be able to go sit in a patio and support our local community. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to Director McGlashan.
Yes, if I can add to Brent's explanation, if there is a patio on private property who wishes to expand continue onto private property, they would still have to ensure that they comply with building codes, fire codes, health unit approvals, and particularly if they expand onto parking lots, because obviously there's parking that's being taken up. They'd have to comply with the zoning bylaw in those cases. So if they did come in tomorrow or I guess next week and ask for an expansion of their patios, they technically can, really without any permit approvals from Mr. Larmer's side of things from the bylaw, but it would be more building codes, fire codes, health unit, and other agencies that would be coming into play. But I think where Brent is coming from is certainly the sidewalk and patio bylaw for downtown on municipal property. That's certainly a key that has to come through Brent. And if there are liquor license approvals, of course, as well.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Burrell, back to you.
Yeah, and I'm not saying with this motion by means skip any of that process. I am not saying that at all. That is, I totally understand the different license requirements. Just being proactive on this rather than reactive.
Okay, is there anybody who has further comments? If not, somebody, Councillor Beatty, thank you.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Bureau, your motion mentions the waiver of fees. Would that just be for setting up in the parking lot, or is this building permit fees if they were to Director McGlashan's point, if they were to ask for an extension of their, what's the parameters of waiving of the fees?
That was taken out, I think.
That was taken out. Then I'll retract my question. My apologies.
Thank you. Director Wills, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could just add a couple of points, and I would add all of this to a staff report as well, but just I wanted to raise them for your interest at this point. This would be a great bylaw to have, but it's also a pretty, I see it being a bit of an extensive process as far as having to decide what are our standards going to be. We're going to have people sitting on a road. It's fairly dangerous in the context of if we don't plan really well in advance and think of all the scenarios that we need to be protecting these people while they're sitting on the streets. It's not something we want to rush into. There's barriers that will need to be like fencing that has to go around them. Technically, the patio has to be at the same height as the curb, so it has to be on a platform. It can't block drainage. It can't block, or we'd have to move parking meters. It potentially could block bus stops. And we have to also block other parked cars from being able to drive into it, essentially. So there's a lot of different standards to research and understand what other municipalities do and what is standard practice. So it's something that should take more time than we're probably going to need at this point. But just to let you know that it's definitely not a quick thing to turn around, and could actually have quite a bit of costs associated for the owners of these restaurants, unfortunately, to have to put up all of these barriers and safety protocols to keep their clientele safe. So just wanted to add that for a little more context.
Okay, Councillor Burrow, last one. Thank you.
I totally understand that, and I totally respect all of that stuff. What I'm trying to do is give them options, and that's it. Just so that we can, I mean, we're in an unprecedented time. So I know that we have to be thinking outside the box, and there's no date on the staff report to come back, because I do understand how everybody's busy and it is a long process. I just want to make sure that we get started and that we can work through this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Worship. And just one quick comment, and I know I can't give direction to staff for the content of the report. I would just wonder if the report would consider some local case studies. Port Hope and Clarington seem to do this seasonally, you know, even COVID or no COVID. So it looks like there's some standards or procedures or bylaws in place that we could look to. Would council be able to see that reflected, some of those case studies in this potential staff report?
I will leave that to staff, and I'm sure they will do a diligent report coming back. They generally try to suggest best practices or what they can learn that can be adapted for consideration to our council. I believe they've always done that. So I'm sure they can take your good suggestion under advisement regarding Port Hope and Clarington, which we might consider our neighbors just to the west of us. Mr. Larmer, have you noted that, by the way? Just comment-wise, thank you.
Of course.
I'm now going to call the amended motion before us. All those in favor? Against? Carried.
Would you like me to, do I need to reread it?
Yes, you do, I believe. Yes, thank you.
All right. Whereas the provincial government has shut down restaurants, pubs, and coffee shops for inside seating and only open for takeout, and whereas this would be very hard for them to be successful and employ staff and could possibly see our restaurants, pubs, and coffee shops close, and whereas this council can show we support all businesses in Coburg, and this is one way council can assist local businesses. Further, that staff streamline the outdoor patio permit process and issue permits in an expedited manner, and further that council directs staff to come back with a report regarding council's direction to allow for restaurant, pubs, and coffee shops, patio extensions in the town of Coburg for council's approval.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Beattie, further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Against? Carried. The next notice of motion goes to Councillor Chorley.
Item 2, notice of motion, Councillor Emily Chorley and Councillor Adam Bureau regarding an equity and inclusion policy for the town of Coburg. The action recommended is that council refer the notice of motion to the June 22nd, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting for consideration by council.
Seconder? Councillor Beatty, all in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer?
Yes, next, Your Worship, we have Councillor Coordinator announcement.
Okay, thank you. I attended my very first virtual OAPSB, that's the Ontario Public Boards of Ontario for Policing. It was done virtually, so it was a wonderful experience, and it was the first of our kind. I'll allow Councillor Barreau under Community Services to speak to Pride. I'm sure he'll represent our views collectively. I'd like to inform the public of municipal matters will take place on June 10th, which is a Wednesday night at 4 p.m. Can I still be heard? I got something on my screen here. Mr. Larmer, can you still hear me?
Yep, we can see you fine. Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, I got something happening from my end. I apologize. I also, along with Deputy Mayor and Councillor Barreau, attended a Rotary Club, an interactive moment, which was certainly I enjoyed and very different. I'd also like to remind that Northumberland Hills Hospital will be holding their annual meeting on June 18th at 5 p.m. If any member is interested, I left the contact information, certainly for members of council. And I also know it's well advertised on the NHH website. Similarly, Northumberland County will be holding a development charges open public meeting on the same night, June 18th. It starts at 7 p.m. And again, if you wish that information, I know you can certainly find it on the Northumberland County website if that is of interest for you, either to be a listener or to make a submission to be a delegation. Again, we learned today, as many municipalities throughout the province, of Premier Ford's Phase 2. And I'm sure, like every other municipality, we'll be dealing with the number of ongoing issues in a proactive way as we learn about the regulations as we receive them later this week, knowing that they take effect Friday on, of course, June 12th. That's my report. And Deputy Mayor, off to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also wanted to mention the three of us at the Rotary meeting. We've been meeting virtually for about a month now, and it was nice to get an update for our Rotarians to talk about what's been happening in the town. As we all know, it changes by the day, sometimes by the hour. So I think they really appreciated that. I wanted to mention the DBIA had an MOU meeting, and we're looking at ways of improving the downtown. And they're going to be doing a walkabout or walk through the downtown to look at paver stones and garbage cans, replacing those in the timelines. Banner placement, we're looking at possibly permanent banners because the cloth banners don't seem to last too long. Street sweeping and weed cleanup. Many of you know that Falconhurst has been hired by the DBIA for the last several years, but with COVID, they have not been able to do garbage pickup or cleanup of the downtown. So that's temporarily on hold. And they're looking at a new RFP for Christmas lights in the downtown, which Carrie ULE is looking after, as well as Jackie Chapman Davis. So we're in good hands there. I did take part virtually, of course, with the Tourism Economic Recovery Consultation that MPP David Piccini is doing. And it was interesting, a lot of reflections similar to what we've heard here locally on the impact of COVID with our tourism sector. We heard from Beth Potter, who's president of the Tourism Industry of Ontario, that 50 to 58% what would normally be revenues are not expected to come in this year. So that's a big loss. That's more than, well, it's 50% of their revenues for the year. And owners are also struggling under long-term debt load. Many small tourism operators are losing their prime months for business. So hopefully this announcement by the Premier today will help a little bit with that. It'll take a while. And with phase 2 opening up restaurants, at least the outside outdoor spaces, that may be a sign that things will hopefully start coming back a little bit. And I've had ongoing conversations with residents of Coburg regarding the beach, the bylaw issues, cycling, garbage, and quite a few noise complaints. I'm not sure if the rest of council is getting those as well, but we're getting a lot of meetings and a lot of noise. So it'd be nice if the residents of town would, respect their neighbors and keep the noise to a minimum. And that's it for me. Thank you, Your Worship.
You're on mute, Your Worship.
Apologize, Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Your Worship. My report is short tonight, as the last two have been quite extensive, but very briefly, application from the Planning Department. Application volumes in the Building and Planning Department are currently quite high, and due to office and staffing limitations associated with the COVID-19 situation, department staff are working hard to ensure that applications are processed as quickly as humanly possible in order to minimize service disruption and assist in the recovery effort. The public is advised that applicant responses and workflow may be impacted to some degree, and thus we respectfully request everyone's patience as we continue to manage the extraordinary circumstances associated with this pandemic emergency. I'm looking forward to, which I believe is June 16th, the reconvening of PDAC, primarily to review the affordable housing CIP. And I know many of council, or all of council, is keen to receive the outcomes of this exercise, and so that we can proceed into the fall. Exciting to see the demolition happening on University Street regarding there on the Balder Corp. Work is underway there with one of the projects. And just briefly, the Council Bureau and I attended just a quick call with the current chair and past chair of the Transition House. So just an update to council. The Transition House Board is reviewing what the context and the definition of a liaison role looks like in their governance structure. I believe we had a positive conversation and answered some questions on their behalf to help them inform that process, but they feel that it's their purview right now to come up with that terms of reference for that liaison role, so that's a mutually beneficial communication relationship, information sharing relationship between the municipality and the nonprofit organization. And I would like to thank the organizers of last week's Black Lives Rally. I attended as a councillor and as a citizen, listening and learning and speaking to the residents in our community, Black residents in our community. And I think Councillor Chorley and Councillor Bureau's motion is timely in terms of equity and inclusion, both in Pride Month and with Black Lives Matter. And I was also really pleased to see police and citizens standing in solidarity and protesting in a peaceful, respectful, and safe manner.
Councillor Darling.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, as everybody knows, along with the good weather comes the construction season, and we have plenty of projects ongoing, near completion or completed. The county has resurfaced Elgin Street between Division and Darcy Street, and the town piggybacked on that project to have the north and south legs of Division Elgin intersection repaved at the same time. If you've driven through there, you'll be more than pleased with that job. The Kerr Street construction project from Division to Darcy Street is ongoing, and the work along that work is progressing well along the Midtown Retention Pond, which is part of the Kerr Street project. I don't know if anybody has been up to that area. You have to kind of walk back in to see it, but it's going to be quite an excavation and quite an addition to the community. Matthew Street upgrade started last week. This project is in conjunction with Lucy. The street will be getting new water main, storm, and sanitary sewers along with sidewalks and pavement. The catch basin and curb repairs on Darcy Street south of King Street have been completed, and the road surface will receive new pavement tomorrow, I've been told. And along with the Darcy Street project, Lake Street and Water Street between Darcy and Henry Street have been resurfaced. And I'm sure we have some happy homeowners on those streets, as the residents have been asking for the streets to be upgraded for some time now. An update on public works staff. They will be utilizing the old works yard at 390 King Street West in order to provide a second site for staff to work out of and maintain a safe distance from each other. Cycle Transitions is not open to the public during the daytime. Their new hours are Monday and Wednesday evenings from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturday mornings from 9 to 12. Please do not enter the works yard despite the gates being open for Cycle Transitions. A detour for our transit. The transit route 2 will have a detour on Saturday, June 13th through the boat lift in. The bus will be turning around at Legion Village and bypassing 3rd Street. Please see the news center on the town's website for a map of the detour. And that's my report.
Councillor Chorley.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. Regarding the marina, the storage compound has been opened to boaters for the last couple of weeks to de-winterize their vessels with new scheduling and social distancing procedures, and those appear to be working well. The marina is opening on Friday, and they will open with new safety procedures in place to protect staff and customers. Boat lift-in is planned to take place on Saturday with road and parking closures. Dredging is being completed for the spring, and staff were able to add approximately 3,800 cubic meters of sand to Victoria Park Beach. Regarding the campground remains a potential respite area for frontline workers, and thankfully we have not had to house anyone there as yet. Regarding the Parks Department, the Parks Department has fenced off Victoria Park Beach, as we all know. They did that last week, and it is now closed. But Council will be considering options for some kind of a limited reopening at the next Committee of the Whole meeting on June 22nd. Park staff are working hard to maintain our parks and boulevards without the usual complement of summer students. So they ask that the public is please be patient, as usual standards have had to be relaxed, especially the frequency of grass cutting and weeding. The Coburg Dragon Boat and Canoe Club's new compound has been constructed, and that's right next to the Coburg Yacht Club's existing compound near the marina's parking lot. Staff are also planning to install a pedestrian pathway along the side of the compound once the boat lift-in is completed this weekend. There are also plans to make traffic one way through that area, and the marina's garbage bins will also be relocated. And finally, I'd just like to state that I took part, along with my family, in the Black Lives Matter protest on Thursday, which really had a remarkable turnout of over 700 other local residents. And I think it was a really important statement about the need to be proactive in our rejection of racism and all forms of discrimination. And it really reminds us of the ongoing need to keep removing any systemic barriers to inclusion and participation by all groups. So again, I'd like to thank the organizers and all the young people who came out in droves. And that's everything from Parks and Rec.
Thank you, Councillor Chorley. Councillor Burkett.
Thank you, Your Worship. The building department is still putting the stats together for May's building report, so I'll report on those in a future meeting. But we're comparable to previous years in terms of construction value and revenue. Otherwise, the building department is fairly active during this very high demand part of the season. And as you can see throughout the town, there are some very large projects coming to completion. One would be the TVM Legion project, is coming along quite well, which is good to see for as it looked like it was slow going at first. As far as fire, the year-to-date calls for service are 594. Prevention inspection activities year-to-date are 199. Training activities year-to-date is 120. I'd like to say that very proud of the entire department and their contributions and commitment to maintaining public safety and providing the best level of service during the COVID-19 events. The crews have been coming up with many new ideas, implementing new measures and methods, using safety precautions to be prepared for the next phase. They're actively working on recovery plans as we prepare to move forward with training, inspections, and prevention and public education messaging. They continue to source the personal protective equipment based on the current call volume, and they're in pretty good shape as far as that goes. The Northumberland County Fire Service review is moving forward well. And in other, I'd just like to say that I'd like to thank Mr. Larmer and his team with the bylaw, as well as obviously the police services, with the ongoing efforts down at the waterfront and in those areas, as well as, thank the staff for their diligent work in getting up the fence effectively. I think it was a stand-up job on how it was laid out. It's really good, the pathway on the beach itself, as well from the boardwalk, and the ongoing monitoring of that, as well as signage. And that's my report, Your Worship.
Thank you. And before I go on, I'd just like to also compliment under the chief and acting inspector, Scott Bambridge, and his team, as was been mentioned by many councillors, the wonderful, respectful environment that was created during Black Lives Matter rally. It's one of the first of that nature I've witnessed in our community. It was great to see everyone participating, supporting their democratic rights, and everybody doing so in a safe environment. And again, I wish to thank the police who put that together to ensure everyone's health and safety. With that said, Councillor Burrow, on to you.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. My report's a little lengthy, I apologize, but lots happened. So coming up for Canada Day, we're doing a virtual Canada Day. The Marketing and Events Department has launched Virtual Canada Day. There are many ways for individuals and families to get involved and many ways to win. This is a great event that will help families and neighbors feel connected during the time they cannot physically be together, with prizes going to support our local businesses. For more information, visit experiencecoburg.ca. Going to the Coburg Public Library, the curbside pickup service is going really well, and they're extending a couple of shifts. They're planning on doing an evening shift and a Saturday shift in July as well. So that's going, and the virtual programs have also been a huge success with the community. Moving on to the DBIA. I mentioned last month, we did the board approved a cross-promotional media blitz, and with a number of different media outlets promoting the downtown and how to support our downtown merchants, as we slowly reopen. Starting June 22nd, the DBIA will be holding a contest via the Instagrams for the 3 weeks showcasing downtown Coburg and all of its merchants. And now moving on to the Art Gallery. The Art Gallery of Northumberland recognizes in these times, digital culture heritage is contributing to people's enjoyment and creativity more than ever, and the availability of cultural content contributes to mental health and well-being. The AGN has provided online and free content in recent weeks, including the launch of Window Wednesday, Friday Video Shorts, which is an excellent digital dose of artwork from our permanent collection and the art education curriculum in support of our teachers and students. They are realigning programs, re-imaging how to deliver cultural content, and have been given an opportunity to spark new ideas and forge new relationships in our community. The AGN is looking forward to welcoming our community and visitors to the gallery soon. In the meantime, please visit their website at www.artgalleryofnorthumberland.com or follow them on the Instagrams, the Twitters, and the Facebooks. All right, moving on to the farmers market. The Coburg Farmers Market Association is happy to report that with the help of Coburg Town Council and staff, we are able to hold 3 food-only markets in this unprecedented time. Each market was different, evolving from what we learned from the previous week. The first market on May 23rd was quickly organized with online ordering and drive-through pickup with 11 vendors. This proved challenging for both the vendors and the customers, especially those who didn't have access to the internet. Many people showed up expecting to have more regular market experience and were unhappy and to be turned away. On May 30th, market was a bit easier as the people understood the online format. We were also able to allow customers to walk in rather than drive in. 12 vendors attended, but felt that without on-site shopping in the future, they may not be able to sell enough to continue. By the third market on June 6th, they were very happy to have both on-site shopping and online ordering. And I do want to thank Mr. Larmer and Angela Stewart for helping, and same with Jackie Chapman Davis. They went out for every Saturday and were looking for ways to help teach and improve. And I thought that was very good. And they were very respectful, and I want to thank them. And I know that the market's evolving, and I know that there was a lot of complaints coming in because of the online ordering only, but we are moving forward and it's looking good, definitely. One sec. Okay. I don't know if everybody remembers, but Max's Big Ride. This year we couldn't do it because of COVID-19, but he did it virtually. And what was really amazing is that people all over the world were riding the bike, doing the 600-kilometer from Hamilton to Ottawa with Andrew and his family. And I thought that was amazing. It was really good. He also did a note to on the Toronto Sun. He did an article, and we were the top 4 towns that he visited that the family loved the best. And I just want to thank the police for riding in with them, the fire department, the town, Ashley Purdy, communications manager, the DBIA, all for when he did come for the past few years, was a big welcome. And I can't wait to see that family again next year. It's also his wife's birthday, so happy birthday. He also raised over $200,000 so far for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Moving on to Pride Month. I got to thank a lot of people on this. I got to thank your worship for coming out and saying a few words, and I want to thank all of council for all the kind words that they've said. And Ashley Purdy, the communications manager, Lori Wills, the director of public works, Kim MacArthur Jackson from Queer Collective, also Ashley Bowman from PFLAG, she's the president, and also the chief of police and all of his officers, staff, the police board. We did a ceremony in the morning. I know it wasn't like last year where we all did the Beatles sidewalk thing. That was fantastic. But we did do a picture, and I know next year we'll get back to normal. I know we will. And I just want to say that with this time and the schools being closed, there's 2 things. One, a lot of students who are going through a rough time right now, either coming out or feeling safe. School was a big part of that, and there was a lot of kids now don't have that. So if there's anything that we could do, call the PFLAG, the Queer Collective. They're always there to help, definitely. And that's my report. I want to thank everybody. It's been a great month, even though we're going through this COVID stuff.
Well, a very in-depth report, and thank you for your delivery. Mr. Larmer, we're on to unfinished business.
Yes, Your Worship. Unfinished business list has been updated. If nobody has any questions, might be something from last meeting that I might have missed, but I'm going to make sure I go through that all again to make sure it's ready for the next round of council on the 22nd.
Any comments, questions from members of council? Not seeing any, so that takes us to the confirmatory bylaw with the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 039-2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of June 8th, 2020. Action recommended that leave be granted to introduce bylaw 039-2020 and to dispense with the reading of the bylaw by the municipal clerk to confirm the proceedings of the council of the town of Coburg at its regular meeting held on June 8th, 2020, and the same be considered read and passed, and that the mayor and the municipal clerk sign the same and the seal of the corporation be thereto affixed.
Seconder, Councillor Burkett, discussion, all in favor? Against, carried. Calling for adjournment, Councillor Darling, all in favor? Good job, everybody. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.